Good morning, everyone. My name is Lacey Villava. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are joined today by Catherine Rober and Justice Bennett from Winterthur, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and the topic they're going to be talking about, their exhibit at the museum representing Black womanhood. Catherine.
Thank you, Lacey. I think I will let Justice introduce herself first, and then I'll introduce myself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Justice Bennett. I'm a second-year Winterthur Fellow at the Winterthur Program for American Material Culture. And my area of specialty, I would say, is art of enslavement. It's specifically looking at Black women and the arts that they make.
Great. And Justice is as you will hear, the creator of this, the idea for the exhibit representing Black womanhood, even though it took a team of many people, including her peers and colleagues and staff at Winterthur to create it, which we'll tell you a little bit more about. But first, I'll introduce myself. I'm Catherine Dan Rober. I'm the Interim Director of Academic Programs at Winterthur Museum, and I'm also the Brock W. Jobe Associate Professor of Decorative Arts and Material Culture. I have the pleasure of working with students and teaching, also working with our Research Fellowship Program for visiting scholars and maker creators, as well as editing the Winterthur Portfolio, the journal that Winterthur produces for interdisciplinary American material culture. So please be in touch if you're interested in any of those things. But the reason that we're here today with you, our friends at Gunston Hall asked us to chat a little bit, we're going to keep this rather informal, but about a wonderful exhibit that was created, as I said, the idea from Justice, but then brought into fruition by a large group of folks about representing Black womanhood. So it relates to this series of collecting rights really through that idea of representation. And we're not only thinking about it historically, but also the idea of representation within museums, within museum collections. And both of us will be chatting a little bit more about that. But I think we'll get started and share the screen. So, just to let you know from the very beginning, we're going to be breezing through some things because we have a rather short amount of time that we are with you today, but Representing Black Womanhood can be found online as the full exhibition. So you can, at your leisure, at any time, in perpetuity, go and explore this exhibit and its topics and objects more on your own. But this is the landing page, and this was also the signature image, which is a collage of a number of the objects and wonderful items that were in this exhibit. Just to let you know also the structure of what we're doing today, I'm going to give a little bit of the introduction to how this exhibition came to be. Then we will be talking about 3 case studies of objects in the exhibition, and then we will sum it up a little bit. So how did this exhibit come to be? It was, sorry, excuse me, I'm getting texts on my phone. This is one of the Representing Black Womanhood is the 3rd of student exhibitions, student-driven exhibitions that have occurred at Winterthur in the last few years. So I'm showing you here a screenshot of Truth the Trade, Slavery in the Winterthur Collection, which is one of the first that students were driving the theme, the topic, the object selection, the design, everything from soup to nuts, of course, working hand in hand with the Winterthur staff to put it together. This one is also available online, and let me, just a moment here. I'm going to go back to screen sharing, the proper screen. Show you this is the on-site exhibition, and then this is also available online for anyone to watch and look at and explore. I've included the web address down below. The second of the student exhibitions was Open for Business, which explored vernacular photography and professional photography of small businesses from both a focus on the Wilmington, Delaware region, as well as nationally. How did people use photography to express and promote their businesses. This is another shot of that. It included multimedia, oral histories, objects, and of course the photographs. But representing Black womanhood started with Justice's class now, gosh, almost 2 years ago, when in the fall semester, each of the students were asked to come up with an idea for an exhibition that would relate to the 2020 overall theme at so many museums of women. And each of the 10 students pulled together a proposal. This is one of our sessions down in the Downs collection of manuscripts and ephemera, as people were pouring through some related objects. In the end, Justice's idea was brought forth, and she'll tell you a little bit more about why she proposed it in a moment, but I just wanted to again show you some of the range of objects that were included, from contemporary art to 18th century documents and newspapers to Winterthur's copy of Phillis Wheatley's book of poems, and discussions about some of Winterthur's architecture. In particular, we used a case study of the Charleston Room, which is not regularly on view, but is very important architecture with a connection to Black women. In the process, we work with a huge team of people, as I was mentioning. So coming up with objects, coming up with ideas is one thing, but then you have to think about how are you going to display them? Are they appropriate for display? Narrowing down the list. That involves a team of people. And here you see an image of folks from our preventive conservation and textile conservation labs working with us to think through how we could display some of the objects that you're actually going to hear about more today that have textile components. And this is the last shot of work that was being done in the exhibition. You can see the open for business stuff was still up. We were planning the wall colors and more for representing Black womanhood. It was going to go up in this same gallery, and COVID hit. So we had to regroup, and like so many museums, so many projects, the students came together. We found a platform called Shorthand that we felt had a storytelling quality that was maybe more in alignment with the goals of this exhibition than the WordPress. And we also wanted to experiment. So this is just a screenshot if you go to visit the exhibition, where you can see the different areas and themes, but it scrolls nicely and creates that storytelling environment. This also ultimately did get a space on the first floor for a handful of the objects. So the full exhibition is the online version, but this just came down within the last week. So you were getting some wonderful shots of what was an area in the first floor galleries at Winterthur. And there was a concentrated area, and then there were a few other items that were put in some of the other galleries. So people, as they walk through the full first floor, they would see objects that related to the topic. Handily, this was also near other things that are pre-existing displays. So right around the corner from where that grouping I just showed is a grouping of Staffordshire figures that includes some that are images of or representations, I should say, of Black figures, both from literary sources, imagined sources, and some that are depicting people, historical figures. And I will now turn over to Justice to speak a little bit about this and why she feels, and we share this feeling, of why that was also important to have this representing Black womanhood in juxtaposition with our regular collections.
Yes, thank you so much, Catherine. So one of my very first projects that I did as a Winterthur student was working with this Jim Crow figure that you see there. It dates from around 1836 to 1845, and it is a racist caricature, a character that was created by Thomas Dartmouth Rice. It's a Black-faced character of a stereotypical depiction of a Black man. I'm a biracial woman. I was raised by a Black mother. So my race and identity is always very important to me and is always very central to everything that I do and all of my scholarship. And I wanted to look at these figures and kind of figure out why they were there and pick them apart in that sort of element. And I also don't want these elements to get hidden, because when they get hidden away, then ultimately we can't discuss what they were and why museums collected these and also the history of the US. So when thinking about this exhibition, I wanted to say, like, yeah, there are a lot of racist things out there, but also there are a lot of Black women that were doing amazing things for themselves, and they were creators in their own right. And they weren't just absent figures, they weren't just passive to be depicted by other people. So these racist stereotypes being juxtaposed by Black women creating their own depictions, I think is very powerful, because it shows, yeah, this was the history, but that's not all that was there.
Great. And so now we'll switch to talking about a few of the objects. They're all wonderful. So we could be here for hours, but we picked three that we thought represented some of the key concepts of the exhibition. And Justice will speak to you about one of her favorites.
Yes, this is probably my favorite object in all of Winterthur's collection, and there are a ton of objects, so that's a very big praise. This was the piece that started it all. When I was looking at items to like potentially put forth, I fell in love with this one because I saw that it was made by a woman in Baltimore, Maryland, and I'm from just outside of Baltimore. And the more and more research I did into this, I learned that it was a Black schoolgirl named Rachel Ann Lee who created this work. And she created this at a school in 1846. And what is very compelling about this is that there's constantly a push to look for objects that are about race, inherently about race, but there are tons of works by Black women that are kind of absent of identifications of traditional race markers. This was a schoolgirl who was making work. And this is just a very beautiful piece. It's very elegantly made. I love the wool on cotton, the needlepoint stitch. It's very common for 19th century needlework. And its subject matter is just a very lovely pastoral scene. And I really love that she signed her name on it. Now, this piece is a part of a larger collection of needlework samplers that we have at the Winterthur collection. We have several others that were made by other women of color. And this is just an example of her piece. So this one was created by Olivia Rebecca Parker. She was another Black girl who made this at a school. And we have, this one is Mary Silver, a similar case to the other two. And then this is another beautiful piece. This one was made by Anne Plato. She was actually the second published African-American woman in the US, and clearly a very skilled artist as well, because this is absolutely stunning. And I'm so excited that we have this in our collection. That we don't just have needlework samplers by Black women, we also have them by Indigenous women as well. So this piece by Sophie Bailey she's an Indigenous woman. And this is not all. We also have samplers that were made by women in Sierra Leone at the missionary schools there. So Winterthur does have a very large collection of samplers that were made by marginalized groups. And there are a lot of research that are doing excellent work on this right now, including Kelly Cole and Mariah Groner, and they have connections with Winterthur. So I really encourage everyone to try to find their work, because these needlework samplers are stunning and they're beautiful and they tell such a very compelling story.
Thank you, Justice. And I'll just go back really quickly to the Rachel Ann Lee, just these detail shots. So you can see as an object, they are very much in alignment with what needlework people are doing of this time, of this era of the early 19th century. We have a canvas or linen ground, a plain weave with then stitches that are done in crewel work wool. And those are tent stitches and cross stitches that are creating this wonderful object. So at Winterthur, we're looking at this for its material components, for its design elements, for its bigger history and how those interrelate. And, as Justice was saying, at first glance, you might not know who made this. Luckily, we have that inscription that takes us deeper into all of the backstories that make this come alive and relate it to these other objects with this growing collection of needlework by Black women and girls at Winterthur. So I also wanted to say it's not all new objects or contemporary things that we brought in that were part of the Representing Black Womanhood exhibition. One of the other main things we wanted to do was look in our collections. We have over 90,000 museum objects. We have thousands of library items. We have a wonderful garden collection. Let's look at what we have and see what else we can say about it. Look at it with fresh eyes. So one of the other signature groupings of materials at Winterthur that people are familiar with are the works of John Lewis Krimmel, who was a Philadelphia-based artist who tragically died young. But created a fair amount of work during his rather short lifetime. This is a painting called The Quilting Frolic. It's one of the most borrowed objects from Winterthur for display, and it has been published and republished. We wanted to take a look at this very specifically to look at, there are multiple Black figures in this, the musician, but the focus with Black womanhood was the Black girl who may have been enslaved or free in a position of serving this tea and coffee at this event, and to take a look and see how was John Lewis Krimmel depicting this individual? How does it compare to some of his other work? We can't know what John Lewis Krimmel himself was thinking in his head. We do not have, his particular words about his ideas about race or anything along those lines, but what we have are his visual expressions through his artistry. And so we're asking viewers, not telling viewers what they're seeing here, but putting this painting in juxtaposition with Winterthur has the collection of John Lewis Krimmel, many of them his sketchbooks. And this is a watercolor sketch from his sketchbook. It's one of my favorite items we have in Winterthur's collections, and looking at that in comparison with both the painted things that we have, renderings that he created, as well as prints that were made based on his work, we really begin to see stereotype at play here. We can think about what were the intentions of the artist or artists that were involved. How does that relate to other visual imagery at the time? And what do we think about it today? We're not telling people what to think, but we'd like to invite people to think more critically. And so we did that by putting these things together. You can see this is a shot of in the gallery where we had the two items. The label invites people to visit and look at this more and to think more. And that's the whole idea here, is to bring wonderful Winterthur objects and put them in a new, fresh light for people to think about in new ways. So that idea of stereotype also plays into some of the ways you might think about the next object that Justice is going to talk about. Oh, one last thing here. This was on the other side of this display is a new acquisition, which is a painting of the Krimmel family by John Lewis Krimmel. And again, thinking about his own role in Philadelphia in this early 19th century time period, him as an artist, him as a citizen who was living in this area, and thinking about what was he trying to communicate through his art. This is another one of our John Lewis Krimmel paintings that many people know, Election Day. And here's a print. Again, another rendering of a Black figure here. When put into print, you see racial stereotypes expressed more strongly than perhaps in the watercolors or the paintings. And again, why? Let's think about that. Now, Justice.
Yes, so this figure is this object is very, very interesting. So this is a Topsy Turvy doll. So what it is, it looks like two separate dolls, but it's actually one completed piece, and you flip it over and then it will either be the white doll or the black doll on either side of it. And this was in production from the late 1800s to the 1900s, from the late 19th century to the early 20th century. And they're very beautiful dolls. So what I find really compelling about this is when you look at this, it looks like a figure of a white girl and a Black girl, presumably a mammy figure. And when you look at other topsy-turvy dolls of the same era, a lot of them very, very much exude that stereotype of the mammy figure. And when looking at it through a very modern eye, it seems like a racial stereotype. It seems really bad. But I know for a fact that my grandmother had objects like this. She had dolls like this, and she's a Black woman. And this is why it's really important to get diverse perspectives on all of this, because for her, this was the only doll that she had that looked like her. This was the only chance for her to play with something that looked like her. So that's why we really have to look at these objects within context and then also in different contexts as well. These dolls were mass produced by a company named Bruckner, and they could be sold as kits. So you could literally buy the pieces and then sew them together to make your own Topsy Turvy doll. So unfortunately, what these, oh, and this is a newspaper print about the Topsy Turvy dolls. So, what's really complicated about the way this exhibition works is that we have very racially charged elements and objects in them. So, figuring out how to position objects in relationship with each other is really difficult. So, these are little cardboard cutout dolls that you can like have and you could work on them, but they all are racial stereotypes. And that was next to the Topsy Turvy doll. So it became a matter of how do you one display the doll so that you see both sides, so you see that it flips, and then also which side is going to go next to this very racist depiction. Like what do you do with that? Because ultimately it's going to communicate something. So these are all conversations that need to be had because everything communicates with each other, and we want to make bigger statements than just look at all of these racist things we have in the museum. We want to have conversations about who would have used these objects, what these objects look like in context, and also what can we do to further these conversations. So we always have to kind of be aware of how these things are going to be displayed.
Yeah, and I'll just say in the decision-making process for this, so again, working with conservators who were doing the mounting of the doll, mounting them on the board, with the student curators, with our wonderful exhibitions team. I should want to give a huge thanks to Kim Collison and Alexander Deutsch, and also our director, Carol Cadu, for supporting this exhibit and making sure that it had both the online and the on-site components. And in our discussions, we did decide to put the doll in the placement with the white head next to the uncut paper dolls, because we wanted people to look at these graphics of, these are not the originals, of Alison Sarr, who's a contemporary artist working on topics about Black womanhood in America, and to have people read about how we were framing these as problematic objects, look at this wonderful artwork that is so thought-provoking, to have the viewers gaze go down to the doll and have that in mind, hopefully, when they are looking at these objects, and then to gaze over to the object that is on the wall in that frame is a collage of woven fabrics that claim that they were homespun, created during the Civil War on a Southern plantation. The inscription is by the white plantation owner. However, some of these may have been industrial, not homespun, and if they were homespun, they probably represent the many hands who were involved with the creation, white, Black, and other. So I'm just going to tell you, so we've, gone very quickly through some of the topics and objects and our goals. What did we do with this exhibition? We wanted it to, again, live on, so online, and Justice will talk about that a little bit more, but while it was on site, we've been trying to do as much as we can to draw people's attention to this wonderful work that people did during, every obstacle thrown at them during COVID times. So here we did our high-end donors a wonderful presentation that again used high amounts of choreography to get this done, and social media posts. And then, of course, living online. And Justice, while this is showing the number of people who were involved, do you want to talk a little bit just about the online version and encourage folks to look at it?
Yes, absolutely. So while the online exhibition is really nice because it helps to kind of get it out there during the age of a global pandemic and keeping everyone safe, it also serves as a really nice function that ultimately this exhibition is about Black women. It's about all Black women, and we want to be able to get it out there. Um, my parents had never been to Winterthur prior to this exhibition. They really didn't know much about it before I was accepted as a student. And I'm sure that's the case for a lot of Black people out there. So for them, this was their first introduction. And my mom was so excited when she saw it online because she said this was the first time she saw an exhibition that was about her and people like her and people like me. So being able to have such a wide-reaching place, like a wide-reaching thing is so nice, especially since there are a lot of conversations about marginalized groups not feeling welcome in museum settings and in these institutional settings. This is a nice way to be like, look, we understand that sometimes these are not always the most welcoming institutions, but here is something we can do to at least help with that. And I like the idea that it can live on because it can encourage further dialogue and further discussions. And I really am excited to see this being built up. I like the idea of everything being online because it reaches who it needs to reach better than it would be if it was just in person.
So my last, thank you so much to the folks at Gunston Hall as well for allowing us time to talk about this exhibit. I know we ran a little bit over time because of our technical difficulties. I do want to encourage folks to come visit Winterthur. We've got some other exciting things happening, including a brand new gallery, small installation, but picking up on some of the ideas that we've mentioned here today, re-examining both new collections and Treasures of Winterthur with the Bearing Witness. Outside In will be opening this spring, nature-inspired design at Winterthur. Same with a revamp of the much beloved Domini shops, craft shops from Long Island with enhanced interpretation. And then also on currently is Lady of the House, which talks about Henry Francis DuPont's partner in life, Ruth Wales DuPont. So now I will say thank you and encourage you again to visit Representing Black Womanhood online. And I will stop sharing my screen because I know our Gunston Hall folks have some other things they'd like to tell you about.
We also have some questions from the audience, which I want to field a couple of. We're a little long on time today, so we won't get to cover all of them online on this program, but we'll try to get through the ones in the chat and respond to them in text over the next 24 hours or so. But there are a couple that I think are really amazing that I definitely want to touch on. And I do want to take a moment to say congratulations to both of you and to the team at Winterthur for putting on this really fascinating exhibit in really challenging times and thinking about ways to make it accessible. I think that's really important to us at Gunston Hall too, is to make these things accessible to people in ways that they aren't physically right now. So firstly, we have a question about the collection at Winterthur. So given the large collection, how did you identify the objects that ultimately went into this exhibit?
Do you want to start with that, Justice?
Yes. So it really just, for me, we just had to pull out a few examples of objects, the kind of thing that we were looking for. And I knew of some of these objects like off the top of my head. So the Rachel Ann Lee is what really inspired me to go that way. But we also had some abolitionist jewelry that I also wanted to put in there because it shows women in a passive role and a lot of gender dynamics there. So that's what started it off. And then it became a team effort. Everyone in my class began to like brainstorm ideas of like, oh, I've seen this doll, I've seen this book, I think this would be great. So that was really great. And then it was just really a lot of people being like, I know something that would work really well here. And I know that this museum has this object that I think would be really nice to have a picture of here. So yeah, it was a really organic process.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean, it having the theme set in place, it allowed us to think whether it's in the catalog record or not, where might we be finding anything that relates to Black women, regardless of maker, representation, image, discussion about, and then called that all together and looked and saw what we had. I think Justice mentioned this earlier, then it comes to the decision making. Do we need to put out a buffet of stereotypical images of the mammy figure, no, we don't need 100. We can do that with one example, and that can speak. And so to have that balance between Black makers, positive representations, stereotypical representations in order to tell the full story. So that was part of that process.
That's just fascinating. I'm so sad I didn't get to see it in person, because this sounds like it was a really thought-provoking exhibit looking at all of those different aspects. We have an associated question. How did you discover that Rachel Lee was a person of color?
Yes, so that it's because the name of her school was on there, and when you do the research on it, you find out that it was a school for freed Black girls. So that was exciting. That's why it's really important that her name was on it, so that way we could kind of figure out her life, because that's what's really challenging, isn't it? Is that we have an idea of who these makers could be, but because Black folk are historically and still disenfranchised, their names aren't on the work. Even this has been like an ongoing conversation where it's like a Black person's hands touch this mahogany table. Like you can really find Blackness wherever you look. And it's just a matter of whose story we decide to tell. And luckily with Rachel Ann Lee's, it's so unambiguously hers that we were able to kind of figure it out and be able to put a name and a story to that. That's why I love it so much. I love this piece.
Yeah, and that is a rather recent acquisition to Winterthur. That identity was known when it came to Winterthur. However, we've been able to do more research. And again, I want to point out and give the specific names of Kelly Coles, who's working on her PhD at University of Delaware about Black women and girls needlework. People used to say they didn't really exist. She has now, I don't know her latest tally, but throughout institutions in the United States and beyond, come up with, I believe it is over 50 examples of these, which, imagine those are the ones that people know about. Now we have some key pieces to use to help with identification through that close looking. If we're seeing similarities to Rachel Ann Lee's needlework, often the needlework scholars know this well. You see sort of trends of styles and decorative elements in schools. So with this additional work, it's opening up huge amount of new questions, both about wonderful objects, construction, materials, but these bigger histories.
And I noticed on the ones that you showed, all of the figures depicted within them were all white. There weren't any Black women or Black men depicted in those needlework. So I imagine that makes it all the harder if you don't know the name of the person who has created it.
It definitely is. And another big issue is kind of default bias. We always just assume that the default is white and man, but in these case, a white woman. So it really is just a matter of like, how do you get past that? And I think now that we're having these conversations, and in large part because of Kelly Coles, we're like actually looking back and being like, well, actually, that looks a lot like this. Maybe it's not that. Yeah.
And it asks new questions about identity. So, when we are saying these are made by Black women and girls, that is not a point we make, is not a category that is narrowly defined. People who identify historically and today as Black may have a variety of backgrounds and pathways of existence. So in any case, those are a lot of the questions that Kelly and Mariah Gruner, again, is another person who's working on these, in addition to our textile curator, Laura Johnson, and Linda Eaton, who collected this.
Well, this is amazing, ladies. It's been really fascinating to hear about this exhibit, what you're doing at Winterthur, the kinds of things that you're looking at. And I would love to talk with you forever, but I know we need to wrap up for today. So I'm just going to let everyone out there watching us know this program, Collecting Rights, is a recurring one. We're working with other museums around the country, looking at how rights are presented in their museums. And this is our second episode. We're hoping to bring you more sometime soon. But we also have a program coming up tomorrow night, Descent Made Material, where we are looking at programs and ideas, concepts that have been shared through handiwork. And tomorrow we'll be talking with Barbara Brackman, a quilt historian of great renown, who will be looking at early 19th century needlework pieces which increased the idea and the cause of anti-slavery in early to mid 19th century America. So feel free to join us for that program tomorrow. We're very excited to have you. It'll be right back here on Facebook. And lastly, I encourage you to support both of these organizations, Gunston Hall and Winterthur. A lot of the programs, a lot of the research that you can see, the acquisitions that we make, like those beautiful needlework pieces at Winterthur, are all made possible in many ways by the donations that we receive. And you can check out donation links to both Gunston Hall and Winterthur in the comments below. We appreciate any support that you can give us. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Oh, one last thing, we also have a quick eval in the chat, in the comments below. Let us know what you thought about this program. We're really curious to hear what you liked, what we could do better for future programs. It always helps us shape our programs when you tell us what you think. So thank you so much for joining us. And like I said, we look forward to seeing you next time.